Hi, everyone. This is Joe Dellicarpini, meteorologist at the National Weather Service's Boston office, taking a look today at the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season outlook from NOAA. So, to begin with, here's a look at the annual tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic. This includes hurricanes and tropical storms, and you can see the year starts off pretty slow here as we go through June and even into July, and the peak really gets going in August, with the peak occurring just around September 10th. And then we see a slow decline as we head into the month of October and finally ending around the end of November. So take a look a little bit more month by month. Starting off in June, hurricanes tend to form mostly in the Gulf of Mexico. That's where our water temperatures tend to be warmest during that time of year. Some of them will remain in the Gulf, and others will kind of recurve off through Florida and Georgia, and then usually off the coast of the Carolinas. A little bit later in the season, as we approach the peak into August, notice we start to see more development around the Caribbean, in particular, in the orange shading, but also some more activity in the Gulf and even off the East Coast. And many of the tracks either head into the Gulf or kind of recurve off the East Coast. So it's really in August, and as I go here into September, where we get into the peak of the season, where we see a lot of activity both in the Gulf of Mexico and in the Western Atlantic Ocean. And then as we head into October, notice we start to see a decline, and most of the activity goes to where the water is the warmest in the Gulf of Mexico, parts of around Cuba, and even off the East Coast where the Gulf Stream is located at that point. So, really, we have to pay attention throughout the entire summer and even into the fall, but it's really that August and September during the peak of our season where we need to be most concerned about tropical storms and hurricanes here on the East Coast. So, taking a look at historical tropical cyclone tracks, again, this includes tropical storms and hurricanes going back to about 1900. And notice the ones that have impacted New England in the red box really have their origins out near the Bahamas. So, we always say here in the office anything with a name in the Bahamas really is our business. Because those are the storms that tend to move up the East Coast and eventually impact us here in New England. Talking about some recent hurricane landfalls, and we put that in quotes because it's certainly been a while. The last landfalling hurricane in New England or southern New England was Hurricane Bob in 1991. That was a Category 2 hurricane. And the last major hurricane, which is Category 3 or higher, was Hurricane Carol in 1954. That was a Category 3. And believe it or not, it was followed just 2 weeks later by Hurricane Edna. It was not a major hurricane, but followed right on its heels in August of 1954. But it's certainly been a while. It's been over 30 years now since we've had a landfalling hurricane here in southern New England. So, what are some common characteristics of our hurricanes here in New England? They're definitely not the same as the big buzzsaws that we see going into the Gulf of Mexico or even Florida. They tend to show a rapid acceleration up the East Coast. And that's why I mentioned when something's in the Bahamas, it can be as little as 12 to 24 hours before it reaches us here in New England. They accelerate up the coast. With most of our hurricanes and tropical storms, the heavy rainfall tends to fall along and to the left of the storm track. That's here on the left image. That's from Tropical Storm Irene. Notice all the brighter colors are to the left of the black track when that occurred back in 2011. The high winds occur to the right of the track, and this is an example in the middle from the hurricane of 1938, the Long Island Express. Notice the strongest winds were from eastern Long Island into portions of southern New England in the red shading, all to the right of track. And same as the storm surge as well, to the right of track. So this is Hurricane Carol in 1954. Notice the track was up through Long Island and Connecticut. And the greatest storm surge was actually in Providence around Narragansett Bay to the east of the track. So once you know where the storm is predicted to go, you can kind of get a general sense of what the impacts will be, whether you're left of track or to the right of track. So in 2025, here's the list of all the Atlantic tropical cyclone names. We're starting with Andrea, working our way through Barry, Chantel, Dexter, Erin, and working our way through the alphabet all the way down to Tanya, Van, and Wendy. So there's the list. Find your favorite name, and we'll see how far we get as we go through the season in 2025. And speaking of which, we do expect an above average Atlantic hurricane season this year. The probability is 60% chance of an above normal season. a 30% chance of a near normal season, and just a 10% chance of a below normal season. So our odds are showing an active Atlantic hurricane season. The anticipation is for 13 to 19 named storms, and the average there is on the right of 14. So we can go above that. We're expecting 6 to 10 hurricanes. The average in a season is 7. And of those, 3 to 5 are expected to be major hurricanes, and the average is 3. So you see, we're a little bit above in our range, kind of in each of those categories for this year. So, why the above average outlook for this season? Well, there are kind of three key factors that are being focused on. One are the warm sea temperatures. Typically, we look for 80-degree Fahrenheit sea temperatures or warmer, and that is expected to occur this summer. Also, weak trade winds. So, the weaker the winds down in the tropics, the better the chance to have an organized tropical storm or hurricane form. And also, what is expected to be an active West African monsoon season, which is a number of kind of disturbances working their way off the coast, the west coast of Africa into the Atlantic. So, if we have those disturbances, weak trade winds, and warm sea temperatures, that can all lead to tropical storm or hurricane development over the Atlantic. So, keep in mind, it's also impossible to predict the seasonal landfalling storms. That really depends on the weather patterns kind of in place around the time of development and over the next week. So, the important thing to remember, it only takes one storm, whether it's an above average season or a below average season. So we do need to be prepared. So, talking about being prepared, here's some forecast information that you can find from our website, weather.gov/Boston/tropical. We have a dedicated web page to all tropical things from the National Hurricane Center and from local weather offices like ours here in Boston. So, notice there are tabs showing the outlooks, active storms, local threats and impacts should we be uh, under the potential of seeing a tropical storm or hurricane, as well as satellite radar and other links as well. So you can go right to that page, bookmark it, and check it periodically through the season. Now, one of the most popular things that people look at is the forecast cone. And just to explain really what this is, it indicates the probable track of the storm. And notice the cone gets wider as you go out in time, and that's by design. It's based upon historical forecast error at different time ranges. So it's not specific to a given storm, it's based on forecast error over the past several years. And it's important to note that the cone does not indicate the extent of potential impacts. So things like damaging wind, flooding rains, and storm surge can and often occur outside of that cone. It's just kind of showing you a general idea where the center of the storm is expected to go. So please keep that in mind as we go through the hurricane season. So really what we need to be asking ourselves is, can we stand on our own feet for several days after a major hurricane strike? Think about things about the number of downed trees and wires that we could experience here in Norwood. Flooding rains, and the image on the right was from June of 2020. That was certainly a significant flood event for the town. And really, can we deal with widespread and long duration loss of utilities? Think about power outages. Those could last in a hurricane, even a Category 1 hurricane, for days or even several weeks. Irene in 2011 was a tropical storm, and power in some communities in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, were out for 1 to 2 weeks. I would expect a loss of phone and communication, cell towers in particular. In Carroll back in 1954, that was the days of the landline phones and took all of Rhode Island's communication wires down. So you really need to be self sustaining before federal resources swing into action. Remember, you won't be the only one needing help. So the more pre planning you do now, the less stressful the event will be. And the link below, weather.gov/safety/hurricane, offers a number of great safety tips to help you prepare for the upcoming hurricane season. So remember to have an emergency kit. So think about items you'd need for at least 3 to 5 days with no power, food that doesn't require any cooking or refrigeration, water, flashlight, and a radio with batteries. That's, certainly a good backup when there's no power available. Don't forget about medicine and maybe healthcare equipment and items for pets, children, or other needs. Have that emergency kit planned now before we get into the heart of the hurricane season. So, in summary, we expect an above normal Atlantic tropical activity for this season. Again, that's due to warm sea temperatures, weak trade winds, and an active West African monsoon. So, the odds are about 60%. There's a 60% chance of an above normal season. And what about the entire summer? Well, that's looking kind of warm and maybe wet. So the odds are kind of favoring above average temperatures throughout June, July, and August. That's our meteorological summer. And to a lesser degree, you can see odds favoring above normal rainfall. Actually, that's true along much of the East Coast. But keep in mind, that's a 90-day outlook, and it doesn't include the day-to-day changes, maybe with some heat waves and some cooler periods as well thrown in. So it's an average over that entire 90-day period. So thank you for listening. And if you certainly have any questions about the hurricane season or weather in general, feel free to drop me an email. My email address is joseph.dellicarpini@noaa.gov. Thanks, and we'll talk to you again soon.